2025, that original summer break. Of course, the Hungarian Grand Prix, round 14 of this 2025 FIA Formula 1 World Championship, as you can see on that lovely calendar right up there behind me. And yeah, what a pity that we almost could have been celebrating with the Ferrari's Italian national anthem, dun, dun, da, da, right, as you know, because we've gotten ever so close to the victory. I think finally we executed the weekend, especially the qualifying, exactly the way it should be, and it clearly paid dividends. And I have to say, if that Hungarian didn't take place over the course of 70 laps, but more like 44 laps, like for example, that Belgian Grand Prix that obviously we've done last weekend, then I think, we would have definitely won the race. Well, because we were leading by that point, were we? Exactly. So, I have to say, this was actually a really good strategic, race. So, it kind of kept you, up to your seat, especially, to the closing stages, even though, of course, from the Ferrari standpoint, by the time we've already seen that, sadly the race was lost, but I thought, it was well executed, really, almost perfectly executed by Leclerc. Was really happy with his performance, and we just have to analyze what happened in that final stint. It's kind of reminiscent, maybe as you will see later on when I'm doing that record-breaking 2024 season. Definitely, check out that Belgian Grand Prix that I did, where I've, set the new Formula 1 record. But here, back to the real, F1, we will tell you what we should have done to win the race. I thought we, again, the first, half of the race, even I would say, the first, 2/3, of the race were executed really, really well. And it was just a pity, that we lost probably what looked to be the engine, but apparently it's a chassis issue, which, really cost us the chance for a victory. And, if, our other driver, obviously Lewis Hamilton, if he managed to get into the Q3, I thought, he also could have done really, really well. As it was, obviously, it's a bit disappointing, very bittersweet, because obviously we've gotten the first Grand Prix pole position over here of the season, so it's going the right way, especially a lot of the updates. But then again, we didn't manage to turn it into the victory in what is sadly, becoming this kind of a narrative of Charles Leclerc, putting that Scarlet Ferrari 27 times on pole position. But actually, obviously he's gotten 8 career victories, but only 5 converted poles out of the 27. I mean, that's a ratio of less than 20%, the lowest of any driver who's gotten 10 plus more poles in their career. So this is definitely something that we have to work on, right? Is it due to the setup? Which basically means, that Leclerc is able to put it on pole position, but then perhaps suffers from a higher tire wear, even though I thought it was really well managed. I think it was very clear after, the second stop that there was, some sort of more serious issue, and you could really feel, Charles, maybe for the first time, probably even ever, you've seen him really driving angrily, especially defending against Russell, because I think this one really hurt. I mean, we definitely have to take the opportunities, and, if you are first, if you manage to qualify first, and if in practices we are just within a couple of tenths of McLaren, and if clearly, the orange cars and any car is really struggling, in the dirty air, and you in front of them, and you have the position at the track where the position is key, and, you don't convert that pole, into a race victory, that really, really hurt. So, in the end, Leclerc finishing 4th, just like last year when he started 7th, this time even starting from pole position is the same result, and Hamilton, was finished when he started 12th. I thought, what I think also played a role was obviously, the weather with the overcast conditions. It suddenly favored the one stop, and Hamilton starting, on those hard tires, didn't have the good tire offset, and then, the mediums were not enough to obviously propel him, through the field, because while it is possible to overtake at Hungary, so far, obviously, I've always planted it on pole position when I was racing in Hungary, and I have to say, at the end of that long straight, you're able to overtake, there are some other moves, like, for example, Verstappen show into the chicane, which, are also exploited, or, for example, into, what is effectively second or the third turn after the second DRSO, it is possible, but it's still, for most of the lap, you have to, follow behind the other car. So, over overall, I have to say that it's clear that if, for example, you catch the driver in front of you, but he's also got in a DRS, then it makes it very difficult, almost impossible to overtake on that long straight. The DRS train has really stopped Hamilton from making any real progress as both drivers fought and drove really, really well with the SF1000T 818 Formula 1 Racing Simulator that you can see here. So yeah, the race, Charles Leclerc, qualifying on pole position, really showcasing, his skills, being the only driver to improve from qualifying 1 to qualifying 2 to qualifying 3. That was brilliant. We were so happy, obviously. Now Ferrari Polo, it came out of nowhere, right? Especially with Hamilton, not making it into Q3. Obviously, we also struggled to make it out of the Q1, right? Because a lot of the times, you put in the tires, the track evolution is such a now in qualifying there's less than a second between the first and last car. So basically, if you cannot just put in a bunker lap in, because you really have to go on 2 timed runs, in order to really take advantage of the track evolution, which can easily give you half a second, and which can be the difference between Leclerc when he was 5th, I believe, or 7th in the qualifying 2, and Hamilton obviously 12th, and out of it, or 13 after, until they got penalized, right? And in qualifying 3, looked pretty good. Obviously, bit the drops of the rain, but especially with the wind change, it really hampered both McLarens, which was great because they were able to dip in below 75 seconds into 1 minute 14s, but Leclerc did 1:15.5, then 1:15.4, 1:15.3, and it was good enough for pole position by less than a tenth. In fact, 3 other drivers, I think that must be, well, definitely for the top 6 drivers, that must be, the first in Formula 1 that, you had the top 4 and the top 6 ever so close. So basically, if you are 0.15 seconds lower, you would be 6th on the grid, right? Such was the difference between first Leclerc, between 2nd Piastri, 3rd Norris, 4th Russell, and even 5th Alonso, and 6th Stroll in the Aston Martins. That was a really good qualifying by them. So, when the red lights went out, Leclerc got a really, really good start. He knew that, nobody has surprisingly won from pole over here for the past 4 years. He didn't want to make it 5 in a row, and that's really surprising, unlike what Hungarian used to be, but it really benefits from the DRS, especially down the main straight. And great move by Leclerc, to block off the inside, then still move to the racing line. It was a brilliant start. I thought he's gotten the best start of them all. Sadly, obviously, the front runners were all on the mediums, Hamilton on the hards, as a couple of other drivers, so he actually lost a couple of positions, so that was a bit disappointing, because if Hamilton would have maybe made it to the 10, and obviously with better qualifying, I think he would have had more of a chance. But, the race was going really well, especially in the first stint, we were able immediately, to pull clear of Piastri, so he was never in a DRS zone. Then 2-3 seconds, even with after 6 or 8 laps, and it really looked good for Leclerc. And it looked like, Piastri had no answer. Norris was, boxed up behind Alonso, who actually played a critical role in how the race panned out, because he was actually saving his tires, basically driving slowly through that Mickey Mouse, that twisty section. And then, all of a sudden there appeared a gap of about 10 seconds, and then he sped up and he was able to kind of keep up the pace. And that was a very interesting strategy, which, almost, caused the front runners to stop, right? But then, it was kind of like, well, Alonso is still there, right? Within about 18 seconds. So maybe you will drop behind him. So in the end, McLaren rolled the dice, stopped Piastri, I believe, at the end of lap 18. And then Leclerc covered him off very well. Obviously, due to the cooler conditions, they went on the hard tires, right, on the white mark hard tires, and yeah, they were unable to switch them on. Because they were unable to switch them on, Leclerc emerged, in the lead, and again always kept it to 2-3 seconds, so it looked really, really good. But at the time, Russell, he also stopped, but it was Norris who then decided to go for a 1 stop, which was actually a better strategy, because you could see, especially behind us, guys like Alonso or Bortoleto, or for example Alonso's teammate Stroll, right, they didn't stop that early, but for example Verstappen of Red Bull did, and in the end, Verstappen of Red Bull started 8, finished 9, kind of unthinkable for them, but it was mostly because, it was not so easy to overtake, even though you had that clear tire offset, right? So lots of the guys who kept the position, the track position, basically stayed there, and they were able to keep the tires for really, really long time, over half of the distance, kind of like what I would do, when I'm racing. And yeah, as a result, then obviously, we had to consider what Norris is gonna do. He eventually, stopped at about lap 30, and then Leclerc was again in the lead and was doing a great job. And then, we stopped obviously lap 40. We were about 5, 6, 7 seconds behind Norris, and it was all about, okay, reel him in, right? In the worst case, you finish second, but yeah, we kind of committed to this strategy. We went on the hard tires a little bit earlier than others. About 5, 7 laps later, Piastri and Russell went, and it was really after Leclerc emerged from the pits that he really started to complain a lot about the car. And for a while he was able to keep up with Norris, and then he started losing half a second, second and a half, and in the end, Piastri breezed past, and then great duel with Russell with about 10, 9, 8 laps to go. Leclerc got a 5-second penalty for it. Never seen him, defending so hard against Russell. But again, kind of fair, but definitely, bit over the limit. But you can see his frustration, because he basically lost the podium, finished fourth, right? Also you could see, for example, frustration from other drivers. I cannot believe it was just confirmed that Verstappen's crazy move on Hamilton into that blind, that turn 4, right? That you take that 6th, 7th gear, at well over 250 kilometers per hour was unpunished. Clearly Hamilton had to take avoiding action, but nothing went out of it. So a little bit disappointed, but obviously it wouldn't influence the overall result. But still, if you look at it, there was after the race, we clearly discovered that there was some issue with the chassis. There was this engine clipping, like for example, probably loss on the power. Probably could have been loss of the battery or something. Maybe related to the suspension. Remember, we got disqualified for that plain wear. So who knows? Like Hamilton said, lots is going on in the background, but this was really disappointing because we clearly lost the pace with about 25 laps to go, and in the end we finished 40 seconds behind when we were comfortably leading. And this is how we should have won the race. If the car was performing, I don't think McLaren's would have been able to overtake us, because the way Piastri just passed us by at the end of the straight, and Russell having so much speed when he was 5, 6 tenths behind, the McLarens, they almost took themselves out. So there was almost a chance for us to score that unlikely podium with the second place, or even if we kept Russell behind to still win the race. With Piastri crazy late moves, trying to kind of dive bomb Norris, but both times it didn't work out. But it's funny because when I analyze it, it was the same time difference, coming out of the final turn between Leclerc and Russell and Norris and Piastri, about 6 tenths, and you can see that Piastri was unable, to get closer, close enough to have, that easy lunge into the inside of the turn 1. But for example, Russell was easily able to pull it off almost twice. So very clearly something was going on. So we gotta sort it out. But this was a well executed race, and what a pity that we had some mechanical issues, because we really should have been celebrating. This was, especially Charles, that was a perfect performance. And yeah, it really hurts. It will be bittersweet, obviously, with that summer break. But hey, this is from our perspective. Couldn't have asked for more, I think, from the driver. Obviously, Hamilton could have definitely done better. He said even need to change the driver. I said, just have a confidence in the car, push it a little bit more. You're not gonna get into the spins, and I'm pretty sure the last 10 races, after the summer break, we're gonna go for some victories, because this is looking good. And even Leclerc said that this is a very rare issue that we won for sure, have for many, many years to come, kind of like when Michael Schumacher's engine just blew up, right, in that final race, in Japan on Suzuka, and it almost never happened, for several years. So really unlucky. And as a result, let's turn around the Scuderia Red Retina iMac to show you how it all finished over here. So I'm sure you guys can see it nice and clear over there. So yeah, in the end, Norris won thanks to that one-stop strategy. Piastri was still kind of happy about it, but yeah, it was a nice tussle, between the McLaren teammates for the final 5 laps. And this leaves the championship nicely poised, as you will just see in a couple more minutes. Third, then George Russell. Yeah, he definitely benefited from Leclerc's, obviously, issues. He completely lost it, obviously, 15 seconds to Russell in the past, 8 laps, almost 2 seconds a lap. So what a pity, and I hope, Charles really starts converting the poles into the wins, that he won't be unlucky. Maybe this is a little bit similar to what happened in Bahrain 2019, that race when we all watched it with the family, when he overtook Vettel, when he looked certain to win, and then, in the final stint, his engine, the powertrain clearly had some serious issues. Fifth, then Fernando Alonso. There was a well-executed drive. Sixth, Gabriel Bortoleto, best result of the season, kind of, followed his manager, because Alonso is his manager, and follow his strategy, and look what he got him. 7 Lance Stroll, that's a surprising result for him, gotten 6 points. 8 Liam Lawson. Lawson was actually overtaken by Verstappen, I believe, on lap 3, but because, they only stopped him once, they stopped Verstappen twice. Another proof, just like when Norris beaten Piastri over here, that one stop was quicker, Verstappen finishing 9, and, I'm surprised he didn't get punished, because, it was Lewis's vast experience, 7 world championships, that knew that, if he didn't get out, of where he would end up, if he just taken that turn, that blind corner, correctly, then Verstappen would smash into him. Because I just don't see, how Verstappen would be, would manage to stay without getting very close to that other curve, which is where normally you would be. So Hamilton avoided a collision, but, maybe he shouldn't have, maybe it would have been just a big touch, and, wouldn't have gotten points anyway, but Verstappen definitely would be punished, would have gotten penalty points, which again, could get him very close to the race man, right? And 10, Andrea Antonelli for Mercedes scoring a point but being led. What a pity that Hamilton wasn't able to get him, and Hajar, obviously, he was just within half a second, but it proved, if all the cars are running just fine, just how difficult it is to overtake here at Hungarian, which is what this means for the 2025 Drivers' Championship, is that Oscar Piastri is maintaining his lead in the championship, 284 points, but Lando Norris is second on 275 points, only 9 points in between them, and I have to say, I don't like to give up, I think we still have a very, very, outside of a chance of a glory, but, even the reigning world champion Max Verstappen, third, Red Bull, 187 points, 97 points behind. We will have a new world champion, and it will either be the one from Australia or the one who has been with McLaren since 2019, just like Leclerc has been with Ferrari since 2019. Fourth is George Russell, 172 points. Fifth, Charles Leclerc, Ferrari, 151 points. Kind of the first fight between him and Russell, which could be a big fight for the fourth or even third in a championship. 6, so Lewis Hamilton for Ferrari stays on 109 points, and then we have 7, Andrea Antonelli, 64 points, 8, Alexander Albon Williams, 54 points, 9, Nico Hülkenberg, Kick Sauber, 37 points, 10 is Esteban Ocon, Haas, 27 points, but you can see 11 now, Fernando Alonso, he will be happy about it, Aston Martin, 26 points, and now finally for the first time this season ahead of his, nepotist kind of, I think we can, say teammate Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 26 points. So kind of like you would expect it. Then we have 13, Isaac Hajar, Racing Bulls, 22 points. 14, then Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 20 points. 15, Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, did really well the last 2 races, gotten to 20 points. Look at this, he knows who is struggling in that Red Bull seat. 16, Carlos Sainz, Williams, 16 points, ex-Ferrari driver. This is a disastrous season. Look at 17, Gabriel Bortoleto, Kick Sauber, 14 points, catching him. And 18, losing another position in the championship, Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull Racing, 10 points. This bit of a criticism of Antonelli and Hamilton, especially, in terms of their qualifying performances, is a bit weird, considering just how terrible performances Tsunoda is putting in. Yes, we know maybe the cars are not identical, but it's still a Red Bull, and you finish penultimate. You cannot even get out of the Q1. I mean, will you stay in F1? I mean, should you? 19 Oliver Berman has 8 points. Maybe if he didn't have issues with the car, maybe he would have been against Tsunoda already, which would make Tsunoda the last of the the classified drivers who have gotten points, because 28 Franco Colapinto, Alpine, 0 points. They had no chance of scoring. His teammate Gasly finished last, and he finished just ahead of just behind Tsunoda. And then 21st Jack Doohan, Alpine, 0 points. Obviously he didn't compete. So this is the Drivers' Championship. Quite interesting, isn't it? And here is the Constructors' Championship for the 2025 season. So McLaren leading with, I believe, 500, that should be 59 points. Second, obviously, Ferrari, 260 points. We're doing a good job keeping third place. Mercedes, 236 points at bay, but we could have definitely extended the gap much, much more. So missed opportunity for us. Fourth, Red Bull Racing, 194 points, not even into 200 points heading into the summer break. That's a disaster of a season for them. Fifth, Williams, 70 points. Sixth, Aston Martin, now 52 points, thanks to obviously, them scoring 16 points in this race. So suddenly they are ahead of 7th place, Kick Sauber, 51 points, and 8th place, Racing Bulls, 45 points. They leapfrog them pretty well. 9 is Haas, 35 points, so they lost a bit of a ground, and 10 Alpine, 20 points. So we can see, lots of interesting things. The fact that we do not even have half of the points, of McLaren's is painful. I have to admit that. But we don't give up a hope. I think in a Constructors' Championship we will be much stronger. This is the Drivers' Championship. That will be really, really difficult, to do anything about it. But yeah, this is how the race finished over here. So I hope you enjoyed my race reaction over here. I was really, getting ready to celebrate with about 30 laps to go, even though obviously that Norris is, one-stop strategy, it would have been difficult to overtake him, but I believe, nevertheless, Leclerc would have been able to catch him, and with the low downforce that he was running, I believe he would have been able to overtake it, and probably Norris wouldn't have fought it, because for him it was really imperative to finish ahead of PS3, which he did, to make the Drivers' Championship very, very exciting. And I'm sure we will make the Constructors' Championship and maybe even the Drivers very, very exciting. After obviously we recover from the blistering 14 races over here in the first 5 months of the season. That's almost 3 races obviously every month. So now there is a well-deserved summer break. So everybody, let's jump into some turquoise sea, as obviously the beautiful blue sky and the beautiful brilliant sunshine will color everything in magnificent colors. Let's enjoy this summer 2025, and we will be back for the final 10 races, which now, I'm running that concurrent 2024-2024 season, and you will see all of that, the race introduction and the hot lab, the new F125 hot lab, the red hot lab, and the qualifying, and obviously the Grand Prix or the sprint qualifying, the sprint and qualifying, and the Grand Prix, and obviously sprint reaction with the race reaction. You will all see the way it was designed, because there is no change. The final 10 races, just like you can see on that lovely calendar that I introduced at the beginning of this great race reaction from Scuderia Ferrari's biggest fan, it stays untouched, and this is how it should be. I love the stability, so it stays untouched from last year 2024 to this year 2025. So yeah, bit bittersweet, but hey, I was very encouraged. This was a really good race, and I'm sure the luck will turn around. And hey, just like the chairman of Ferrari, the executive chairman said, let's finish the season on a high, and in the worst case, we will be dominating in 2026, right? Alright, so, Charles, great job, just like me, winning, leading for Ferrari, that's how it should be. I'm sure Lewis Hamilton, the new Ferrari driver will get there soon, and we will be winning for Forza Ferrari, right? So everybody, enjoy your summer, and we will see you at the end of August. Goodbye from the beginning of August from Jan, Smiley Sun Champion, Ferrari.